So very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of myself and also on behalf of Edwin Kanters, who was a co-leader of WG1 during the last 2 years of BESTPRAC Coast Action. So it's great to see all of you, some old faces and also some new faces. We have a nice presentations ahead of us, so I would not take much long with the introduction. But for any case, I would like to remind all of you that this section is recorded too. So if you don't want to appear on the recording, please switch off your cameras. But obviously, I think it won't make any issues afterwards. But we will share the video after the meeting on the BESTPRAC and the EARMA websites too. So how this section will work, we are having 4 nice and extremely interesting presentations. Our speakers have 15 minutes for their presentation. I will raise my hand when we are arriving to the last minute of the presentation, and then I will interrupt you, unfortunately, even if the presentation is exciting, because we have to strictly keep the time limit. After each presentation, we are planning to have a 5 minutes long Q&A. For the Q&A, please now you can choose either to put your questions in the chat function. This is a kind of regular Zoom meeting, so it's not a webinar. You don't see any Q&A section, only the chat. So please put your questions to the speakers there, or if we still have time, you can raise your hands in the Q&A and I will give the floor to all of you on a first come, first served basis if we have enough time for that. So very briefly, this is it. 15 minutes for the speakers and then 5 minutes for the Q&A, and please stick to the time. And now I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, who is Marina Papayorio. She is coming from the Climate and Atmosphere Research Center of the Cyprus Institute, where she oversees all communication, dissemination, and exploitation activities. From previous years, she also has experience from the private sector, the higher education sector, dealing with communication, marketing, business development. And her presentation's focus is on how to write an impactful communication and dissemination plan. Again, very warm welcome here, Marina. I'm giving the floor to you. Please share your presentation. And I'm asking all the rest of the attendees, the participants, to mute yourself, not to interrupt the speaker.
Thank you very much. Just to check before starting that you can all see my screen and it's in presenter mode.
Yes, perfectly.
Great. Thank you. And thanks again for having me. We'll just go through some hints and tips for writing an impactful dissemination and communication plan. So without further ado, we'll go through some quick definitions of key terms and how it all fits within the Horizon Europe context. The plan itself, what's included there, and then what are some key things that can help make it as impactful as possible. What we'll look through directly applies to the Horizon Europe concept, but just as kind of concept and tools in general, they could apply to other grants and contexts as well. So very briefly, the terms communication, dissemination, and exploitation in themselves, very interlinked, but distinct in their own right. So just to set the scene, communication is to inform about the project and its results, successes to the wider community, to the public, to media, not just specialist users. Dissemination is about specifically the transfer of knowledge and results and making results available for potential use by others. So the focus here is on specialist communities, scientists, policymakers, industrial partners, and then exploitation is specifically about making concrete use of project results. This is most commonly associated with commercialization of research, but also can relate to standardization activities, policy, etc. So something that's been differentiated within the Horizon Europe concept is having this clearer connection between project results, outcomes, and impacts, and how communication, dissemination, and exploitation fit into that. So before we go into it, just very quickly, what is meant by results is everything that is generated within the project. So both tangible and intangible. Key results could be the ones that bear a bit more significance, for example, for exploitations. Research outputs are the ones that are to be made accessible through scientific publications. Outcomes then is the medium-term effects that the project has. So using the results to achieve this through the project. And then moving on to impact, those are the long-term effects that they affect the wider society. And they are not only impacts when it comes to science, but also the economy as well. So just to kind of to sum up, results fit into outcomes that then enable impacts. And why are we talking about that? Why is that important? Dissemination, communication, and exploitation are the measures to maximize impact. And there was enhanced focus, as you've seen within Horizon Europe, on impact, defining key impact pathways, making it clear that it's not just about science, but also societal impact and economic impact, and making it clear that the measures to maximize impact are integral to Horizon projects. So they are very clear, the benefits for these activities within the European context. They are contractual obligation, but they're also very clear benefits for beneficiaries. So a clear plan or retention of a plan can improve chance of proposal success. Also, when it comes to implementation, it can increase visibility of the project, enhance reputation, open up new opportunities for funding and partnerships, really help maximize impact of the results for the beneficiaries, for the project, for the European Commission. And the plan really then is the roadmap for how we can get from the results to the outcomes to the impacts. And this is, in summary, what's been called as a key impact pathway. So the logical steps towards the achievement of the expected impacts for a work program or a project. And at proposal stage, something that's different at Horizon Europe is that it's no longer required to submit a full-fledged plan, but a short description of dissemination, exploitation, and communication activities. But making sure that it's clear how these activities could help get us from results into wider impact. Then during implementation, a full plan is submitted, and there's also throughout the process, I focus on ensuring that what's included are concrete actions to be implemented both during and after the end of the project. So what's really being asked is making sure that what's set out is effective, has a purpose, and it really fits into that focus on impacts. So what makes a plan impactful then in helping us achieve that? And I'm not going to really talk about the template that's provided or what's the boxes that we're asked to fill, because we'll all have access to that and it's widely available. But how do we actually populate them? How do we plan for impact every step of the way? And here it's a kind of simple process of thinking about it when setting the goals for dissemination, communication, and exploitation. So at the stage of setting the strategy and direction, which will need to happen at proposal stage, during and throughout implementation, so deciding how will we actually get there, and then also during monitoring, which is a very key step because it allows us to check how effective the measures we're enforcing are, and helping us decide whether we need to make any changes. And within that, it's also a key consideration about how do we make sure that whatever we plan is actually appropriate for the project, and is possible and it's realistic. And that has to do about planning for the right resources for it, ensuring that partners involved have clearly defined roles so the work gets done. And then perhaps even more importantly, having a mindset of leading with the purpose of it. So not looking at dissemination, communication, and exploitation as a tick box exercise, but really thinking about how can we choose the activities and measures that will have the maximum impact for us on the project, with the allocation of resources that we could realistically allocate to them. So to look at that in a bit more detail at the strategy and direction level, a kind of frame for doing so is translating project outcomes and impacts into concrete objectives for dissemination, exploitation, and communication, so that every single measure that is done within the project is focused on contributing towards achieving the proposed outcomes and impacts during the project and beyond. So going back into our results, outcomes, impacts time frame. And a framework or a checklist to help shape those objectives is going through the question as what is the expected outcome, who will need to be engaged for it, so what are the target groups, why they need to be engaged, and when as per the time frame of the project. And there are relevant tools available for that, for example, impact canvas. To look at it with a kind of practical example, if we say we're looking at a research organization that's working on a project and they want to ensure the maximum uptake for their results, and to do that they want to strengthen collaboration between academia, government, and industry, and this is their outcome, who needs to be engaged? Then the target groups are other academic bodies, key companies within industry, key people or bodies within policymaking, a government. And when we look at then setting an objective for dissemination and exploitation, it could be that we say we want to engage an X number of companies within a specific sector, within our country, or within the European context by month 12 of the project. And we want from this process to have at least 3 leads for potential collaborations. And then when we have this kind of North Star for the dissemination and exploitation activities, what we can go into then is look at what are the measures that we can use to help us achieve those objectives. So it's not just about what we do, but how we do it that can help us get to maximum impact. And for that is really linking back to the purpose, to the objective that's been defined, who it addresses, so the clear target group, the target audience, and what message it needs to deliver to them. And by message is not just the actual result in kind of raw form, but adapting that based on the purpose and the target group, and making that message clear and simple to understand. And a kind of great rule of thumb is to think, okay, what do we want these target groups, these people to do when we engage them? How do we want them to act? And what do we want to get out of it? And that's kind of a way to help guide that process, help define it. And then of course, identifying the right channel and tool to land that message within the resources we have, within the constraints we have, but also in the most impactful way possible. And here there are a lot of tools available. Some lead themselves better to communication or dissemination or exploitation. For example, when we look at open access publications, we generally look at dissemination. But there are also tools that lend themselves to all activities, like a website or a social media. But then the question becomes, okay, which one of those would be the most impactful for me at the moment? So if we're looking at engaging the general public for communication purposes, perhaps Facebook is the right tool to reach people more widely. If we're looking at engaging specialist audiences within industry or policy making, then perhaps LinkedIn or Twitter are going to be best suited. So that's kind of helping to decide which one of these channels will be put forward for the proposal and help us choose how to allocate resources without spreading out too thinly. And here are just some examples of photos from activities within each of those channels. And then last but not least, monitoring. So once we've kind of set the objective, decided which measures need to be implemented for each one to help us get there, how do we actually measure that what we're doing is effective and is helping us achieve the objectives? And that is the kind of the joy and the great use of reporting. There are a lot of new reporting tools and frameworks within Horizon Europe in the forms of tables that are helpful in providing a structure in defining those objectives. I won't go into it in detail now. They can all be accessible online. I'll just go quickly into what's kind of the baseline or the requirements for reporting, which is kind of the high level. So performance against activities objectives set at proposal stage, and also kind of the overarching KPIs for maximizing impact, like the quality and quantity of publications, conference participation numbers, number of public events, etc., etc. But there are also other objectives and other metrics that can be used to help us qualify performance at a lower level, so at a more granular level. So if we're, for example, organizing an event and we want to kind of measure its success against meeting the objective, going back to engaging, X number of policymakers or companies, if those measures are set from the outset, then that can help design the event in a way that's most suited to the activity, and then can help us evaluate how well it went based on what we were hoping to get out of it. And similarly, with kind of ongoing measures like a website or social media or newsletter, tracking how many people visit a website and what they do when they're there can help us tweak it to get more visitors or get them to do something. Similarly, with social media, checking how they engage with our posts, or whether they engage with it, whether they open the newsletters that we sent out, whether they click the links that we want them to. Something that's ongoing, doesn't help much time to set up, and it can really help give a better idea of whether resources are allocated where they should be. And overall, it's just a sense of thinking, are we really taking the time, and are we putting in the effort to make the most of the resources we have? And if that's done at the planning stage, the thinking is done at that point, then it can save time and effort later on. And these are just some relevant tools and resources that can help in putting together the plan specifically for Horizon Europe. I'm just not going to go into them because I'm a bit conscious of time, but yes, they can be accessed.
Time has just ended, but please.
Yeah, this is my last slide. If anyone's interested, they can go into it later on. So thanks for listening, and thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marina. It's very highly appreciated that you provided such a nice presentation and such good tips. And already there are a few questions in the Q&A. Meanwhile, I realized that you cannot raise your hand, so please put your questions in the chat if you have anything to ask. So I'm just reading out the first one, which arrived from Emma Zidal. Can I please ask what you mean by tangible versus intangible results?
So it's about talking about whether it's results that are written down and submitted as part of the project, whether it's kind of scientific publications, or intangible when it's kind of a process that's being developed and used within the project, but it hasn't yet been documented, or it is not a key result of the project, so it's not going to be communicated. So that was just to say that results, it could really be anything. It could be conversations that have come out of it that are not really recorded, but key results are really the ones that could be pushed forward or help us get to outcomes a bit more. Not that everything contributes to it, but the key results and the research outputs are usually the ones that are best suited to the measures to maximize impacts of communication, dissemination, exploitation.
Thank you very much. There is another question from Team and Athena. Do you have any recommendations for the number of parallel activities?
I guess with parallel activities would mean the kind of number of activities we do within the concept of a plan. If that's the question, I guess a good rule of thumb is what's said about doing something that's proportionate to the scale of the project. So if we have a project that's 1 year long with limited budget, then we can just see what's feasible and what's realistic within that. If we're looking at the multi-million euro project that takes over multiple years, then the expectations are much bigger. So we will need much more rigorous planning and many more resources and kind of parallel activities to meet the objectives for that.
Yeah, there is no one-size-fits-all rule for this, I guess.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, no. But this is the case, I think, for other issues too. I see another question from Edwin, who asked that regarding the reporting, if we are obliged to report after the end of the project, and it also happens that by the time the project manager has left the building, how can you prepare for that situation, and how can you prepare for that reporting during the project lifetime? So how can you ensure that even without a project manager and the coordinator, you can do it successfully?
Well, hopefully we will have planned it before we leave the building, which is a short answer. But the long answer is it kind of depends on the requirements of the project and the impact of the activities that are being done, as is the case with kind of research outputs, is not immediately seen at the time of the activities happening. So it was announced that some measures will be introduced within the context of Horizon Europe for monitoring these or reporting these. I haven't actually seen something in writing yet, but from a recent webinar, which I have the link in the resourcing page, it was said that the Horizon results platform might also accommodate that. So the exact kind of format requirement for reporting will be defined and communicated to us, I'm sure. But from our side, it's just about planning for that as well. If we've set up the monitoring tools at all levels, then we should be able to have that data even after the end of the project.
Thank you a lot. Exactly. Unfortunately, I cannot ask more questions because we have to move to the next presenter. So Marina, thank you a lot again for your presentation. Here we can see your contact details, so anyone can contact you directly. Also, as Johanna said, all the presentations will be shared in the follow-up email. So I would like to now introduce our next speaker, who is Vesna Bozanic. She is holding a PhD from biochemistry, but she has already broad experience in research management, both in life sciences and social sciences. Currently, she's working in ISCT, Instituto Universitario de Lisboa, and she will speak about how to guide researchers into presenting the public benefit of their research, how to understand the difference between scientific impact and social impact beyond the academia. So Vesna, the floor is yours. It's great to see you here as an old WG1 member. Please share your presentation and go ahead.
Thank you for having me. My presentation will be about guiding, as Virak said, researchers into presenting the public benefits of their research beyond the academia. And in fact, it goes as a nice continuous of the previous presentation. So what we do and how we do it with the researchers in our institutions once the project has come to the end. Just to make clear what we know, but sometimes is needed to be called attention in the scientific community, what exactly is the social impact of the scientific research as a difference to the academic impact. So external impact is defined as an effect, change, or benefit to the economy, society, culture, public policy or services, health, the environment, or quality of life beyond the academia, and it is the definition within the research excellence framework. So as the impact and the importance of social impact is recently reflected through the concept and the structure of all the new funding programs, at the first place Horizon Europe, but many others as well. So to continue. Departments and universities nowadays really need to be able to easily assess and range information about the external impacts in a forms that will be plausible and convincing for the external funders on one side, for the government regulators, for the media, or for the other sections of the university. So in this presentation, we will see how the research administrators call researchers' attention to the importance of evidencing external impact and suggest the way of keeping track, and that can be a bit more complex as opposed to the academic impact. What exactly is considered impact, and how can it be presented from our point of view to the research community? The most common questions are: what is exactly social impact? Is it necessary? What it really means? How to access it? Which audience is considered as the beneficiary of the scientific research? Then how to explain it to them beyond the academic public and researchers' peers? And in some cases, doubt is whether in the specific research field we can determine exactly what is the impact beyond the academia. So here, as the lifetime of the whole project thinking and planning, we plan, as nicely explained in the previous presentation, what is the expected impact in the phase of the preparation of the project, and then along the project outputs are produced that are correlated with the expected impact. Then come the outcomes that are related to the goals of the project, and only at the end we may evidence the impact and specific societal changes of the project. So what are exactly the types of the social impact that can be considered? They can be impacts on creativity, culture, society, also, all depending on the type of the scientific research that's being performed. Then it can be economic, commercial, organizational impacts, impacts on the environment, positive, hopefully, impacts on the health and the welfare, then impacts on the practitioners and some kind of professional services and groups, they can be impacts on public policies, laws, and services. But the most important, the impact should not be narrowly assessed, because all these types of impact can be achieved within the single research study or the project, and can therefore be presented later on like that. So the doubts that come out of it is first, is the impact always positive? And well, the idea is that we do science in order to improve our society in different ways and different levels. So it is expected for the impact to be positive. But what can happen along the lifetime of the project or after it? It may happen that it creates all kinds of reactions. Let's say some opposing opinions that can create debate that does not seem as positive impact at the very beginning, but as the domino effect, at the end, it will create the effect and bring some improvement to the society. Is it positive for the all involved beneficiaries? And then does it always follow the expected line of the implementation? It may not, but as every project comes with a certain idea and then develops along the way, so the impacts that are expected at the beginning can differentiate while the project comes to the end. So what are exactly the beneficiaries of the scientific research? They can vary. It depends on the type of the project, but much more, as I will explain later, is on the evidence that we have. So beneficiaries are the groups, types that are reflected through the theme of the study and experience some changes because of the study. They can be professional groups or institutions. We can group them as people of the certain age group or the certain gender, or we can group them by territory at the national level, at the international level. They can be of various interest groups. For example, if we are studying some certain kind of disease, so the group of people that have that kind of health issues are considered beneficiaries, or users of some specific kind of technology. So it is very we will choose the beneficiaries at the first place according to the theme of our research subject. But then we can say that one specific study can at the end turn out to have more than one or many groups of beneficiaries. So how can we determine who are exactly the beneficiaries of the study that we have performed? The most obvious answer is according to the evidence that we have later on that a certain group has benefited of the certain research study. I can give just a brief example that was assessed in our institution. It was a research study that followed medical practitioners in the public hospitals in Lisbon, in Portugal, that work very long hours, and then all the consequences that come out of those extended work hours. It was even before the COVID. So what can we say? Who is beneficiary of that work? It is obvious to say, okay, those medical professionals. But on the other hand, public hospitals. Then beneficiary also are end users of those healthcare services, or geographically maybe area of Lisbon, where all of that is the study is pre-informed. So when we come to the stage to present the results of the research study and say, well, that was the impact, we need to focus on the evidence that we have that were produced along the lifetime of the project, and at the end gave us the proof that some social impact has occurred. So we start the whole process with a scientific research study. Along the project, we have scientific publications that are scientific outputs that create academic impact, and then those research create social impact, and we present that impact through various types of reports depending on the need where we need to present them. So how to structure those reports? Well, depends on where we are going to present the report. We always start with the scientific study that was the base, and then with the academic output that was produced with all the references, and then we need to present the details of the impact. So what happened, how it happened, what were the particular contributions, which types of beneficiaries were influenced, what levels of the community, then all details of the nature of the impact, how the beneficiaries benefited or were influenced in any way.
Sorry for interrupting you, but we are getting to the end of your presentation time.
So I will just come to the end by saying that presenting of the impact nowadays is increasingly important. First, because of the funding programs and the focus on the importance of the impact already from the moment when we prepare the project, and what can we expect as the benefit to our society, but also when we discuss this need with the researchers in our institution, we can call attention that benefit is for their career development as well, because nowadays the researcher's CV is also presented not just by the exhaustive list of their scientific outputs, but the impact that came out of it. And when presenting these reports regarding the impact, always keep in mind that the public for this type of reports is also general public. So people that are not deeply into the science or into that scientific area whose impact was presented, but the public who is interested in the subject and who needs to be informed in an appropriate way in order to for the public to benefit even more from the scientific research. So
I think this was a great conclusion for that. Thank you very much, Vesna, and sorry for interrupting you, but we have still other presenters. I just would like to ask one question which was put here in the chat. So have you found it easier to support researchers identifying their potential impact and their beneficiaries by backtracking from project expected impacts, or forward thinking from their research questions and outputs they want to produce?
If we prepare researchers from the very beginning, from the pre-award stage, when the whole structure of the project is prepared, if we prepare them that along the project we need to track the evidence of the impact, then presenting it at the end, of course, is much more easier. But it's not impossible to do it backwards, because along the project, the idea is that it will go a certain path. Some kind of sideways happen along the way. So the evidence of the impact can differentiate from what was expected at the beginning. As long as it's well recorded and evidence, then the presentation is less of a problem. And that evidence of the scientific impact can be very diversified. Even, for example, nowadays, when as a consequence of the pandemic, many activities that we do are online that used to be done either presentially or through some written reports, now are presented online through some kind of media presentation or blogs or social networking. So this also is the evidence of the impact that occurs only after the project or the research idea has come to the end. What can even be considered as the evidence is, for example, let's imagine that some study is highly confidential. It's related, for example, to some financial practices within the banks. It's confidential in every way. But then we can't use the reports that are confidential as the evidence of the impact, but we can use some kind of, or the public evaluation of the improvement or of some services, or even interviews with the people who were involved in the process.
Thank you a lot for the very detailed answer. There is still some questions in the chat, so I would encourage you to get in touch directly with the people, and also as you shared your contact details, feel free to contact Vesna, as we have to move forward. But thank you a lot again, Vesna, for your wonderful presentation. And now I will give the floor to Professor Jean Schiare, who is currently the director of the Climate and Atmosphere Research Center of the Cyprus Institute. And he is a grant holder of the EARMA H2020 teaming project. He has received his PhD in atmospheric chemistry and physics from Paris 7 University. And afterwards, he works even in CNRS as research director. And now he will share his experiences about this project that I mentioned, EARMA, which is funded under the widening program. So, Professor Schiare, please share your presentation, and then the floor is yours.
So I will try to stick on my time. So it's for me a pleasure to present you our EARMA Center of Excellence, but also how research managers and administrators are every day contributing to the development of this center. So briefly, a short introduction of the Cyprus Institute. It's a research educational institute established 2005. It's a European institute based in the Eastern Mediterranean in Cyprus. It's a non-profit, non-governmental organization. We have 4 research centers, which are multidisciplinary, one on energy, environment, water, one on science, technology, archaeology, culture, one on computer-based science technology, and the one that I'm responsible for is on climate and atmosphere, and is a winner of the widespread teaming center of excellence called H2020. Our institute is currently has run so far more than 68 million euro of competitive grants, more than 1,000 scientific papers over the last 15 years. We are now more than 200 research staff at the Cyprus Institute, and 16 labs, 64 research projects. This is the funds received so far for Horizon 2020 per full-time equivalent research staff at the Cyprus. All over Europe is 12,000 on average. For Cyprus is about 100, and it's a factor of 10. And the Cyprus Institute is doing even better in Cyprus. So we are basically bringing a lot of money through this type of competitive funds, mostly from Europe. I believe we are among the European champion of the widening calls. We have 2 ERA chairs from Horizon 2020, one on solar thermal energy and one on modeling, simulation, engineering application. We have 2 European joint doctorates, and we have 2 twinning, which have been funded as well on solar energy and archaeology. And overall, we have this teaming proposal that I am the coordinator, which stands for Eastern Mediterranean Middle East Climate Atmosphere Research. So this project aims to establish a knowledge hub for air pollution and climate change in Cyprus and the Eastern Middle East region. It's an upgrade of an existing atmosphere and climate division of the Institute, received a budget more than 45 million euro over 7 years, started in September 2019, to establish a new center of excellence. So this type of call is leveraging advanced partners. We have selected here from 3 different top organizations in Europe: the University of Helsinki in Finland, the Max Planck Institute in Mainz, Germany, and the Atomic Energy Commission in France. Our Center of Excellence aims to support Cyprus Academia Public Department, but also the Eastern Middle East Research Institution. So the motto of our MCARE project is to field observations for better prediction of the impacts of air pollution and climate change, to better mitigate and adapt with the policies and innovative solutions. I will not go too much details here in how our center is organized, but basically measurements, observations are fed into models to better predict the climate and air quality, and we have developed an impact and policy department so as to enhance the impacts of our project. Our project has been designed to address major issues of citizens, and if you look here, the most important issues facing the European Union for European citizens and Cypriot citizens, climate change comes as the second most important issue that Europe is facing, and the environment comes as 6th. So we are, through our proposal, addressing major concerns of European citizens. If you look for the second point for the environment, air pollution comes as first of the environmental concern of European citizens before water pollution, etc., etc. So our project is designed from its inception to tackle issues that are of a strong concern for the European citizen. We have established here a department for impact and policy. This is again very important, and the European Commission believes strongly in this type of approach, integrated approach from observations, models, and impact. For the implementation of enabling technologies, for health impact assessment, for impact on key economic sectors, mitigation scenarios with cost-benefit analysis, legal framework and policy aspects, and also currently strongly supported by the President of the Republic of Cyprus, who is supporting our initiative. We have aligned our project with the Cyprus Smart Specialization Strategy. That is very important, and in fact, many of our observations on greenhouse gas emissions, which are related to buildings, electricity and heat, agriculture and transport, are matching the Cyprus Smart Specialization Strategy. So this was already something very important and also acknowledged by the European Commission. The climate action is also top priority for Cyprus and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This is the current ranking of the 28 EU countries, or 27 plus UK, for UN Sustainable Development Goals. And fortunately for us, Cyprus is ranking the last. And the climate actions are among the main challenges for Cyprus. And these are the trends for the different goals. And it shows that for climate action in Cyprus, we have no great improvement. So this is the background of our project that is addressing climate change in the region. And currently, the country itself is doing poorly in this direction. So the way we have built our project and the recipe of success of our proposal, I believe, is a perfect alignment of expertise from Europe. CA in France is a world leader in terms of innovation and research, while the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry in Germany is leading applied and fundamental science, and University of Helsinki is supporting education and research infrastructure. So basically, through this type of a partnership, this consortium, we tick all the boxes we wanted to box for our project in terms of air pollution, greenhouse gases, and climate. But also, more importantly, we have managed to engage here very high-profile world scientists who are, for instance, part of the Academy of Science, either in Finland or in France, with very strong leaderships there in the top 1% of the world. The way we are developing our project in Cyprus and the way our research management support administrators are supporting us is to build a network over the island. First, interconnecting our activities with the government departments of the Republic. And we have here logos of different of these departments where we are currently working with, but also academia and other teaming centers of excellence. So we are networking our teaming center of excellence. We have 6 in Cyprus. I believe this is the best performer country in terms of teaming all over Europe, but also with private stakeholders and NGOs. So we are developing a national network that is strategic for the dissemination and output of our project's results, but also we are developing a regional network that is at the border of Europe, with the Eastern Med and Middle East, where we have established a very strong partnership with many countries in the region. I very often refer Cyprus as being as far as Baghdad from Athens. So we are a European country in the Middle East, and we have leveraged this geographic position to build our regional network with a specific budget to build a collaboration network with many countries in the region, from Lebanon, Israel, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Our center has been established a year and a half ago and has grown from 30 staff to 100. It was a major growth, as you can imagine, plus 70 staff, which is currently organized through this organogram. And if you want to have a visual of how many people it makes, it's this. It's a major effort in terms of recruitment, which are shown here, in terms of recruitment of staff, either from faculty, research support and technical staff, but also research support and coordination, which are these research support and administrators. We are proud to be as much as 15 different nationalities, half of them being non-Cypriot. 1/3 of Cypriots we have in our center have been repatriated from abroad. So we don't have a brain drain, but the opposite trend. We have recruited massively young researchers, but also international faculty from Germany, UK, Finland, and France. So this is a very important criteria in the development of this type of center of excellence. Your capacity to open your center to international talents. Now, in terms of major achievements of our center of excellence, in terms of administration, we have started our project back in September 2019. We have established our research center the following January. We have been able to invest as much as €2 million of scientific instrumentation, again, with the great support of our admins and managerial staff. Invested 2.7 million soft funds, received, sorry, 2.7 million soft funds, mostly from Horizon 2020, within a year. And in terms of human resources, affiliates professor from the region, bring our staff up to 100, recruitment of international faculty. In terms of research, performing research activities in the Eastern Med Middle East region, fund SARS-CoV-2 project. So we were in the middle of the COVID lockdown. We have been able to move our research to societal challenges like the COVID-19 epidemic, and publish within a year 74 peer-reviewed paper, a new record for our center. In terms of innovation, establish 2 spin-off companies, and in terms of education, recruiting as much as 10 PhD students. So these are all the key performance indicators we have been able to show to the European Commission during the first reporting period of our Center of Excellence. Now, in terms of mechanism of project management and monitoring, I think something of interest for you. So we have established a research innovation support operation at the Cyprus Institute. I think you have heard a couple of people already today, such as Marina Papayorio or Andriy Ferralongus, who are working within our team of RISO. And we are also interconnecting this team with the institute itself. So this team is embedded in our center. So strictly speaking, they are working under my direction. And this is a great advantage on a day-to-day life to have such a support within the centers at the closest of the researchers' needs.
Professor, sorry for interrupting you, just indicating that you have 1 minute more.
1 minute more. Okay, I will speed up, but I think I'm close to the end. So this structure allows us to be autonomous, fast, and efficient. Through the establishment of a modern research innovation management and admin unit. 12 staff recruited, we started with 2. So you have seen that we have recruited a lot of people in very few time with a lot of specialization and following international standards. So this is the deployment of the function. These are the capacities, experience, and skills of our research managers and administrators. I will not go through the list, but we are recruiting great people here, and we are embedding them in wide international networks. And with this, I thank you for your attention. And I finish with this picture of our development. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for the detailed presentation and also for highlighting the essence of the research support offices, research management staff. There is one question coming from the audience from Aurelia Povilaike. What were the main challenges in bringing such a center together? I think this is an all the time question towards such projects, teaming projects and others funded under widening. How do you see?
Well, there is many challenges. One of the challenges is that we are establishing it in Cyprus, which is lacking of a tradition in terms of research. That's why we are also eligible for this type of widening course. So it's a clear challenge. At the same time, you can hear that I'm not Cypriot, I'm French, and I've managed to establish this center in a country that is not mine. So I believe the international dimension of our center should be highlighted here. I mean, having a director in Capacity Developer Center without speaking, unfortunately, a word of Greek, didn't stop us in getting this type of proposal. But many challenges. One of them is related to human resource strategy, of course, recruiting international talents. Also being autonomous in terms of decision-making for the financials, for the administration, for the research portfolio. Also in terms of sustainability, I think this is a very important criteria for the European Commission. So to be in capacity to generate revenues from competitive funds for services, products that we are generating within our center. So it's all these challenges, bringing at a level of excellence, research, but not only, because now European Commission wants also innovation together with research and education all together. So to become this regional center of excellence, Cyprus is too small for us to become excellent. We need a regional dimension. And I believe the Eastern Middle East is a quite hotspot in terms of climate change and air pollution to have brought attention of the European Commission in this respect.
Thank you a lot for the detailed answer. And I would encourage all the rest who has still questions to contact directly you. As now I would like to give the floor to Sedef Iskit, who is by profession a molecular biologist specialized in cancer research. And she has been already working with several Dutch, European and American grant schemes. So an experienced research administrator who has recently joined the VU Amsterdam Grants Office team. And she will talk about now about the ways to check all the boxes to impress the evaluators and improve the chances of a proposal to get awarded. So Sedef, the floor is yours. Please share your presentation.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Sedef Iskit, and indeed I'm a grant advisor at the Free University of Amsterdam. There's quite some hundreds of registrations to this event, so it's really exciting to see such a big audience, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts on constructing a high-quality grant proposal beyond scientific excellence. So as we all know, grants are extremely competitive, and having a great idea on its own is not enough to get your research funded. You need to find the right program and express your idea in a clear and appealing way. So all the components come together to make a strong project proposal. Some may look less important than others, but these aspects coming together creates the kind of synergy in a proposal that makes the reader feel right about it. So if one piece is missing, that's what will stand out and the whole picture will look full. Of course, we all have to pick our battles when the submission time approaches, but my take-home message will be, do not ignore any of these components. Think about them in parallel and implement them as you go. Now, we'll talk a little bit about each of these aspects: the scope, the content, the story itself, visuals, and the layout. So when we talk about the scope, we talk about where your research would begin and where it would end. What does it aim? So, and then is it in line with the call itself? So no matter how brilliant a research idea may be, if it doesn't fit with the ambitions of the call, it will not get awarded. So to look at a Horizon Europe example call text, we'll use this slide. And the text itself is cropped a bit, but the call texts are not much longer than this actually, but there's a whole work program behind this, of course. So each component gives you information about the call. So you start with this code and the title of the call. The code already tells you that it's a Horizon program call, that it belongs to the cluster 1, health, and destination 1, staying healthy. So you can go check out the ambitions and the objectives of the work programs, the overarching objectives of these clusters and destinations in the work program. The call itself has outlined its own expected outcomes. So what should your research lead to? And the scope of the call itself. So what you should be focused on, where you should start, where you should end. The budget, of course, gives you an idea on whether these resources would be sufficient to conduct your research, to accomplish your aims. And the fact that it's a research and innovation action, or maybe an innovation action, can tell you what the funding rate will be, what kind of stage of development the call would expect from you. So this call text, along with accompanying work program documents, will help you understand what's important for the call. It's very important that the applicant understands every piece of this, and that they are prepared to address all these aims, the challenges, and the impact described in the call text. So based on this, you can answer the questions. Are you indeed solving the problems described in the call text? Are your projects direct outputs in alignment with the call's expectations? Does the call offer sufficient time and budget for what you have in mind, which will feed into the feasibility criteria of the proposal? And whether you can achieve the expected scientific, societal, and economic breakthroughs. Based on these, you can make sure that your project is a good fit, and you should also make it very clear that it's a good fit to the reader. The message here again is to understand every piece of the call text and include this in the project. The second component I would like to talk about is the content itself. So the content is the information that should be found in the grant application, like the title, abstract, main proposal itself that has the background information, the problem, the solution, etc. The content, of course, needs to be in line with the call template. Sometimes there's not much of a template. The template is very, very broadly sectioned. So you need to create your own flow. But template or no template, there are always instructions for the applicant. And sometimes you can access the reviewer's instructions too. Based on these, you can decide on the content of your proposal and make sure it follows a logical and nice to read structure. So here, for instance, this is an ERC starting grant template. So this is one of the cases where there is not much of a template. They section it in 2 parts, state-of-the-art and objectives, and methodology, and you have 2 short paragraphs of instructions. But then you also have the evaluation criteria. So here, I like to mark the keywords, what kind of impact they expect. You have to focus on the science, the technology, and the scholarship of the applicant. and the project itself, what kind of challenges you will be addressing, the fact that it should be a high risk, high gain project proposal. The feasibility is an evaluation criteria. The methodology needs to be novel. So each of these can be used as keywords, and you can even make subheadings using these keywords. So in this way, you directly answer the questions in the call text, even though they are not direct questions. And if you put the right information under the relevant section, by sectioning your proposal like this, you make the reviewer's life a lot easier. Actually, they can immediately find what they're looking for to score your proposal. Secondly, no matter the call or the template, you will always be asked to set clear goals. Where do you want to end up at the end of this 5-year research, for instance? What do you need to achieve? To what end? How will you know that you've achieved it? You need to formulate very clear answers to these questions. The reviewer will likely have a question, their instruction sheet saying, are the objectives of the proposed research in line with the course challenges? Are they realistic and achievable? This can be a straightforward plus on the scoreboard, but surprisingly often we see objectives not popping out of the proposal. So, we try to review proposals with a very critical eye, especially when it comes to objectives, and we try to set them up as smart as possible. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Specific means that we need to really specify the outcome that we aim to achieve. We need to have a way to know that we have achieved it. It needs to be realistic and reasonable, that we can do it, we are capable of it, the budget is enough, the time is enough, and that it will have a positive impact in the field in the future as well, and that we know until when we need to accomplish it. So in that sense, it doesn't make sense to set a goal like my goal is to help cure cancer. This has no value, it says absolutely nothing. It really needs to be further specified, and it's okay if it's multiple sentences. It also doesn't have to fit into one sentence. The other components of setting goals are, for instance, outputs or deliverables. These need to be tangible. They will be actually delivered, like a report, like a design file, a prototype device. The example here is standard operating procedures for the generation of XYZ cells. My examples will always be around biology because that's my background. So outputs very often get mixed up with milestones. So milestones are major steps forward that make the subsequent steps possible. So the generation of an XYZ deficient mouse model. So probably in your research, this would be a very, very important step forward. Without this mouse, you can't conduct the following work package. Or maybe if it doesn't work, then you will call it a no-go moment and cancel the project. These kinds of moments can be set as milestones in the project. Some proposals, some calls also ask for outcomes. So what happens when your project outputs are actually used beyond the scope of the project after the time has passed, the project is closed. So it could be that this disease model will lead to identification of novel actionable therapeutic targets. Maybe 10, 15 years from your project, we will have a drug in the clinic. These kinds of outcomes. And finally, key performance indicators are also sometimes asked in the proposals as a component to set goals. But these are the indicators to measure success. These indicators can be set for within the project, or it can be beyond the project. It can be about submitting manuscripts, or if we are talking about a spin-off company, for instance, it can be about expanding, scaling up, putting a marketing team on another geographical location. So the third component is the story. So the story, so you can apply several kinds of storytelling methods here, but overall, a good story needs to be convincing, coherent, relevant, targeted, personal, and visual. So what do we mean by convincing? So to write in a convincing way, you need to communicate your statements in specific terms with examples and numbers. put things in perspective for the reader so that they fully understand your case, that they see how important it is, what the point you are making and why it is important. So then the quote here is sell, do not tell. A coherence is how you set up your story as a flow. You follow a logical flow and develop your ideas step by step. You should write in a way that raises curiosity and inspires further reading. Don't assume anything as being obvious. Do not expect your reader to derive the same conclusions as you do. Really spell everything out and even emphasize the most conclusive statements by bolding or underlining or whichever emphasis method you are using. And do not distract the reader with unnecessary details. Explain the what, how, and why of your innovation, your research, where you are going with that. Do give the information that's necessary to understand the points you are making. And do not assume, again, the reader would just know everything before you tell them. And targeted means writing to the right audience. So who are the reviewers? Researchers who will be reading the proposal, understand the background, the level of expertise these people would have. Are they expert scientists, non-expert scientists? Are they not scientists at all? They are just people they like reading proposals. Ask your colleagues, supervisors, grant support officers who have experience with the call. So by knowing the audience, you can fine-tune the amount of terminology and level of technical detail. Because if you don't, if it's too technical, the reader will not understand. You will lose the reader along the way, and that will impact the outcome. So a lot of academic grants are personal grants. So it's important that you put all the accomplishments all your accomplishments as a researcher forward. This is not a time to be modest. You need to put yourself in the spotlight as the researcher. Do not hesitate to use I did this, I accomplished that. If you use we, make sure who your collaborators are in that sentence so that they know what kind of network you have, what kind of expertise you have access to. And finally, visual. So what does it look like? Showing is always better than telling. So we respond to and process visual data better than any other type of data. So visuals are not data in the context of a proposal, and they are not decoration. Visuals are a powerful tool to communicate your message and tell a persuasive story. So a good story makes a long-lasting impression. By implementing these in your writing style, you can make a long-lasting impression that will work in your advantage. And along the same lines, some tips I have here for reader-friendly writing, such as be specific as possible, but because of time constraints, I'm not going to go through these one by one, but everybody will receive this slide, so feel free to read through it. Just be specific as possible, avoid heavy terminology if it's not strictly necessary, and do not abbreviate things that are not repeated often enough in the text, because that will be confusing as well. Less is more is indeed. The page limit is never a target. Horizon program used to be 70 pages. It's way too long. If you can tell your story in 60, go ahead and do that. An average sentence length, we like to say it's 20 to 25 words. Of course, not every sentence can be in this interval, but generally speaking. And if you can say, if you want to say the patient was examined, do say the patient was examined. Don't say an examination was carried out on the patient. This is literally half as long. That adds to the conciseness of the story. My last 2 points are visuals and layout. I know I have only 1 minute left, so I will go through it very quickly. So these make it easy for the reviewer to understand your point better and quicker. With visuals, by using diagrams, logos, icons, you can show a lot of things. You can show what the problem is with all the factors that contribute to the problem, how your solution would work. You can illustrate the interdisciplinarity of your consortium, and you can depict who does what, either sequentially or as part of a whole. And in this way, a lot of information will more easily be accessible to the reader. My very final point is the layout. To prepare a neat proposal, that looks nice, that's consistent style-wise, headings, text, spacing, etc. And some decorations, if the context allows for it, always looks nice and always adds to the general impression to the reader. A quick example here is the right image versus the left image. Nobody wants to read a text-heavy 15 pages like on the left image, whereas on the right one you see some visual descriptions, you have paragraphs, fine spacing, nicely spaced paragraphs, a list, page numbers, logo, etc. The common pitfalls we therefore observe are the repetitive text that is already in the context, for instance, unspecific phrases and subjective phrases, and redundancy, also repeating introductory sentences at each and every section. And of course, too much text and too few visuals. And I don't mean data, because let's be honest, no, this is interesting for very, very few people. So, so these were my points for today: the scope, the content, story, visuals, and the layout that add to the scientific excellence that we know we all observe in the academicians we work with, but altogether to deliver a high quality project proposal. These are just some quick 20-minute tips and tricks. Thank you very much for listening.
Sadaf, thank you a lot for this amazing presentation. I think the audience is still processing the information that you shared with us. I mean, I think it would take normally at least 45 minutes or even more to go through all of this.
The information I got was this was supposed to be a 20-minute presentation, and only Friday afternoon I realized it was 15 minutes plus 5 minutes Q&A. So my apologies.
No problem. It's simply great to have all this information, and it will be even greater to receive your presentation afterwards. And it was very useful. Probably before we can go back to the plenary session through the link that was shared by Niall, and is also in the agenda. I would have only one question, is that do you think, is there any necessity to change some or shift some emphasis between the different parts with regard to the requirements of Horizon Europe?
To shift some, what, sorry, can you
repeat? Some emphasis between the different parts, or with regard to the changing requirements, and also with regard to the even more limited page for the templates.
Well, I think the new template will allow to more directly communicate the information necessary. I really like the new impact section, for instance. There is a very clear emphasis and restructuring of the impact section. I hope that that will make it easier for the applicants to write it, actually. The emphasis remains on the impacts of the call itself and the broader impacts, the future impacts. I just hope that the instructions that we are getting now will make it easier for the applicants.
Okay, thank you a lot, also for you and for all the other presenters. I think this was a great session today, and we will continue within this group tomorrow too. But now I would like to encourage all of you to go back to the plenary session using the link, which is also in the chat. And still, again, if you have any questions to all the speakers, feel free to contact them directly, and you will receive the presentations after the meeting. Thank you a lot for being here. It was a great pleasure to see you all, and yeah, let's continue. Goodbye.